All right, so we're going to try to get back on schedule here. Rachel, what's kind of our timeline? 45 minutes.
Right there. Oh,
all right, so to kick things off, before we kind of do a quick round of introductions here, I know Jax, who started this event today as an MC and so graciously introduced many of us. I think she should rise and everybody should give her a round of applause for everything that she's done for SampleCon. Now, initially, yes, she was getting thrown off, but after that, we're trying to bring her back. So please help us out. She's obviously very welcome back. And one more thank you. I think, it's not easy to put together a conference. Many of us have spent hours, days, weeks, months putting this together. And this is our first year out of New Orleans and in Austin. So I think a big thank you to Rachel for putting this together. Year one in Austin is not easy, so thank you. All right, so before we kick things off, how about a quick round of introductions? I'm Mendy with Protégé.
Nancy Pergun with Ipsos.
I'm Courtney Williams with Lucid.
I'm Joe Jordan with Sint.
All right, so perfect. So for those that have attended, I don't know why I'm holding this. Jacqueline, help me out. What am I doing? Who am I shooting? What am I doing? All right, props are good. So for those that have attended before, and for those that haven't attended before, I think SampleCon has we always say in the spirit of SampleCon. There's that saying that we've said for the past few years, in the spirit of SampleCon. And what does that mean? The spirit of SampleCon is exactly what was explained earlier with all these fancy pieces up here, but it's all about a dialogue. It's all about a conversation starters. I know many of us go out to the water stations, the coffee stations, but it's really, why don't we bring it here? We're all a family. We're all in the same business. We're all doing similar things, competitive things, but we all have what to learn from each other. Competition is great, brings out the best of us. And the goal of SampleCon has always been, let's bring it to main stage where the unspoken is spoken. And I think we've done that for many years. And I think the goal of this discussion, this session, is to really, this is not a panel. We have this panel up here in case people in the audience don't want to talk. But this is about expanding the panel to our audience, to everybody that attends SampleCon. As we all know, this group is, I think we're a group of entrepreneurs, a lot of smart people in this audience, people that run successful businesses, that have done many things for this industry. So again, we're here to try to kick off a series of various topics within the sample market research industry. But we're hopeful. It's really about trying to get the audience to share their opinion, bring out, don't be shy. That's what SampleCon is all about. Speak your mind. And we'll try to go through a series of topics that are, some of them have been discussed before, but hot topics that go around. And we really want the input. It's not about Q&A. It's about expanding the panel to you, the audience. All right, Nancy, you want to kick us off?
Yes. Hi, everybody. And I'm going to try not to cough into the microphone. I am getting over a cold, so I have my water. And my cough drops over there with my colleague. She's going to give them to me if I need them. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is how do we, as an industry, adapt to the changing landscape. So the landscape is changing. Respondents have changed. Clients have changed or changing. We have a lot, our industry has kind of grown. We heard from the investors panel that there's a lot more players in here now. I work for a full service research agency. I come from that traditional viewpoint. Life isn't traditional anymore. How do we adapt? How do we become more agile? And I'm going to be kind of provocative and say, why do we seem so resistant to change? And I'm talking, we love to blame the clients, but that's not actually true. I think we ourselves are more resistant to change than our clients. Mm-hmm. And we are the first line of defense before, to have our clients do anything. So I want to discuss this. How can we be more agile? How can we be less resistant to change? And so just to give you an example of one we all know right now, why is it taking us so long to go to mobile friendly? Like, seriously. You know, so this is,
Why are we clapping?
yeah, well, that's a good question, yeah. So why are we so resistant to change?
Yeah, so let's get the microphones ready, because again, we want to hear from folks in the audience. One thought before we kick it off to the audience: why are we like mobile and resistant to change? And I think here's the reality: if a research project or a study needs to get done and it's getting done, why change, right? So a perfect example, let's use mobile, right? And I think although there's been, we've seen in the data, and I'm sure many of you have seen, it's not like we're not heading in the right direction. We are heading in the right direction. I think a year ago, 2 years ago, we were way behind, and things are moving, just moving a little slowly. Why is it moving slowly? In my opinion, just kind of a frame of reference of how it could change pretty quick as it relates to a sample project. If today clients and the cost structure behind a project is on a CPI basis, cost per interview, right? That's the unit economics, that's how we do things. Not saying it's going away, I'm not changing anything, I'm not advocating to change it, but just a frame of reference. If the unit economics, or not the unit economics, but the pricing structure, the pricing model change from a CPI to a CPC, I promise you, mobile would be out, it would be done already. We'd be 90% through. But because you're not charged on a CPC, on a cost per click, what does it hurt anybody that's paying if it's not your audience that's being affected, not your panel? So again, I'm not advocating for one way or another. I'm just saying, why change? Why should we change? Anybody else? Let's hear why we're resistant to change and mobile. Raise your hand. All right. Hold on, we can't hear.
Yeah. There we go.
I think that people aren't necessarily resistant to it because you're blind if you think that it's not going to be required of us eventually. But I think the big challenge that certainly my clients are trying to overcome, I'm trying to help them, is that they don't know how to change the things that they're used to seeing in the long grid survey and getting it into another place. So I think it's up to us to help them do that. I'm curious to other people in the room. Thoughts on that, on the ability to know how to transition from non-mobile to mobile?
Lisa, we need a microphone up front.
Hi, everyone. Lisa from Innovate MR. I think, from my perspective, it isn't so much about design and how to render it for a mobile audience. And it kind of reminds me of like when we made the transition from Katie to online research way back when. There's always challenges with that. However, there's a lot of research on research. I know, Nancy, you've been doing a ton of work on how to make mobile work. I think it's related to something different. I think it's about the fact that we are hoarders of data. And we don't want to limit ourselves, and we're kind of throwing everything into the kitchen sink, and we're not having that dialogue of saying, what do you really want to answer? What is most important to answer? Let's leave the other stuff on the sideline and really focus on what matters. I think right now our clients are dealing with a lot of internal constituents. They're trying to keep everybody happy, get all their answers, all the questions answered, and that yields these 25, 30-minute surveys, and that's just not what fits within the mobile realm.
Well, let me challenge that a little. Are we not doing our job? Are we just by saying, and I come from full service, so I'm doing the same thing, okay, you got to cut it down, instead of saying, how do we think differently about how we do surveying? So that's actually at Ipsos, that's one of the conversations we have a lot of internal sample conversations where we bat these ideas around. We don't know the answers necessarily, but how, is even surveying, should we even be doing it the way we've been doing it? Like, should we be serving out one question at a time instead of a full survey? Like, these are the kind of questions I think we need to ask ourselves. What do you guys think?
I'm honestly tired of talking about mobile, and I think it's not going to change until people say no. Like, sample companies aren't saying no because they know their competitor will do it. Full service market research companies aren't saying no. Until people say no, I don't think it's going to change, unfortunately.
That's a very good point, and it also brings me to something that I've also considered, which is do you think it is contingent on the larger suppliers, the larger clients to make the change? Because it is really hard for a smaller company to say, I'm not going to field a 30-minute survey. At Ipsos, when we did it, I looked at it as an opportunity to kind of right some of the wrongs when we moved from mail to online. We just took our mail surveys and we put them online. We said, oh, it's the same methodology, apparently. And so this is the time for us to kind of internally say, we're going to right some of those wrongs. I was able to sell that in my company, which I was really surprised at, to be perfectly honest, because I advocated global limits. And there's 2 people in the company that are allowed to approve any exceptions, and I'm one of them, globally. That was a tough sell, but I did it, and I was really happy. And I wonder, it makes me wonder, like, what I said was that as a company like Ipsos, where we have a lot of clients and we're a large company, we have the ability to be able to force change. And should the larger companies, the larger clients, because as soon as the larger client makes changes, we start saying, well, so-and-so did it to our other clients, right? And they go, oh, maybe I should. So that helps. I mean, what do you guys think?
So let's move it to the next one. And just a final comment, Brian, on that. I know we're tired. I'm also tired of talking about mobile. I think things are happening. I don't think we realize. And I think the fact that there's a void and there's a problem, it creates opportunity for disruption. And that's why there is, I think, a sample con. And there are companies that are emerging because that is the attitude is, hey, it's not hurting. And guess what? There are companies that are figuring out how to make a difference. And that's what this is all about. Let's move on to the next one. Because we want to get through a few topics. So Nancy, obviously, everybody here, I think, knows your tenure in the industry. What is it, 20 years?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay. So 20 years in the
when I was
industry,
14.
and I think there's a lot of experience up here as well. Courtney?
Oh, longer than I want to admit.
Joe?
Since about 2002.
Joe?
Yeah, since '94.
Okay. There's just a lot of market research up here. What about me? I think
Yeah, I was gonna say.
5 years. But, so I think for me, it's super interesting to ask this question to you, Nancy, and fellow colleagues up here, but to the audience, which again is somewhat of an obvious one, but I think it's so interesting to bring a perspective of 20 years to 3 years to 2. Some of us are 6 months in. So DIY, API, programmatic, automation, and all these words that maybe were buzzwords, they continue to be buzzwords, but it's happening. I mean, it's happening. Everybody's trying to figure out what their automation strategy is, what their programmatic strategy is, DIY, API. 20 years into this, what do you feel? How do you think of what everybody else is talking about?
So I can give you my opinion. It's just my opinion. I'm afraid that DIY is hurting our industry. I think that people don't know how to do surveys. Nobody's trained anymore on how to actually write a good survey, and they have no idea how to sample or how to even think about a target audience. And so DIY makes me nervous.
Nice. I think we're going to get a lot of hands for that. Let's go, Matt. Matt Dusig. Let's get a microphone up here. Jax, now's a good time for some shooting, right? Right? Matt, go ahead.
Okay, Matt Dusig, Innovate MR. So I think back to the days before kind of Google, standardized online advertising. I think there was a lot of fear and misunderstanding, and there wasn't a lot of know-how, and there were intermediaries who handled ad buying, and now just everyone goes on to Google and ad services and buys their ads. And they know how to do it, and they're trained, and Google offers all sorts of service and full service solutions to train people and to educate, and they have sessions. And so I think we're at that point where I do believe that samples should be procured programmatically or automated. I will go so far as to say that I do believe the future of sample should be on a cost per click basis for the benefit of the value of the panels and the panelists. Because we can't claim that panel quality has suffered, but then not care that panelists are burned and that we're not paying them adequately for their time. So I believe cost per click is the way to go. But so I think we're just at a place where training is required.
All right, we got hands right over here.
Jim Whaley, Innovation MR. With regards to DIY, I'm kind of a little bipolar on the issue because as it relates to the end client, I think that there's plenty of use cases where it's working just fine. We all know companies like Qualtrics, who've been very successful in the space, and others, SurveyMonkey, the list goes on, putting technology in the hands of our clients who are very adept at using it for many different types of purposes, A/B testing, message testing, things like that. And one could argue that it works fine. And for many of them, they're very successful at using it for things like concept tests and segmentations and so on and so forth. There's limitations to some of those tools, even though they become more sophisticated over time. But notwithstanding the tools themselves and their capabilities, every individual user has their limitations relative to their experience and their training. So we as practitioners are here to solve those problems. Our experience in doing thousands and thousands of surveys over our career, over lots of different types of industries and different types of conditions are supposed to lend that experience to our clients' particular problem, where a particular client doesn't necessarily have that experience. So I think DIY relative to the tools and the experience set that they have doesn't match up. So I think it is problematic. Then you lend the issue of sample to that and the experience of dealing with sample and the logistics of that, it just compounds the problem. Programmatic, look, as a company, as a relatively new sample company, starting out quite successfully, I might say, my model would be not to add lots and lots of new people as my company grows, but to think about adding more and more programmers to capitalize on the opportunities of programmatic at an equal rate to adding sort of the traditional model of project managers, because that's where the opportunity is growing in this business. So that's my take on it.
Let's get one more and then move on to the next one, next topic. I think we got right.
For the DIY perspective, I think it really, I'm Scott from Branded Research. We are opening up research to so many more people. I'm not even sure I would know how to go run a TV ad, but I've run hundreds and hundreds of Facebook advertisements. And there was no real formal training that came along that was like, okay, this is how you're going to run. You just have to kind of run experiments and figure it out. Obviously, there can be a lot of formal training that's built around all of that, but we really had to have those tools to begin with. And so I think the DIY is just exposing so many more people to research and opening up the opportunities for us to just expand our tentacles into other ways of doing research. And so I wouldn't discourage DIY.
All right, moving on to another topic. Just curious, out of maybe a quick raise of hands. I know that there are a lot of sample and panel companies here, obviously, that operate panels. How many of you, and don't be embarrassed, how many of you are frustrated by the damn DQ?
You want to
The DQ. So if you're operating a panel and you're spending in user acquisition, panel acquisition, and your panelists come in to try a survey, and 9 out of 10 times they're out the door.
Hands up, guys. Come on.
No? Okay. So Matt, would a cost per click model solve for that maybe? Because now you've got to be careful because you're going to pay for that click?
I call it, in my head, it's cost per targeted start. Means you target the people you want, and then you pay for the survey start. So not just a click. So there's a little bit more to it. Buyers, the same thing on Facebook. You log on to Facebook, I say 18 to 34 men in California. Okay, I'm paying for that click, but it's a targeted click. Same kind of concept. So, I mean, the DQ, the problem is that, and there has been forever, a lack of integration between survey software quotas and sampling system quotas, so that the two can't communicate, which means that if the client tells us to deliver sample, but then quotas are changing and being modified in the survey software and it's causing disqualifications, and we don't have transparency to that, then we are burning real people who are getting frustrated, and we're not getting paid. So I think there's a number of issues, but part of it is tech integration.
Right. Which kind of leads to another point, and then we'll come right here for a question. But something that I've heard from many companies that operate panels, which is, right, we always hear data. Data is so important. Data, profiling. We need more and more and more. Do we even use this? Aside from targeting, what is, like I have Jim, like I have this moment at times, like, rich profiling, let's go, we're gonna have everything, and then the next day I wake up, I'm like, what on earth is the point? Nobody wants it or cares for it. So who is profiling? Does it even help? Sorry. Does it help just so we can provide feasibility? Or do people actually want to trust and utilize the data that panel companies provide to do something with it? So why are we profiling? Why don't we go back to just a router and go get what you get?
or put it on the survey.
Why profile? Just get a router going.
I was just going to say, I mean, you re-ask in every single survey, right? I've been dying for universal demographics for like 15 years, and I've lost all hope. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope.
Still working on it.
But, that was my earlier point, is that, we're hoarders of data, and we want to collect a lot of data, but we're not always using it in a really smart way. We're not sharing it with other companies or with our clients in a smart way. And so it's, I was thinking what Matt was saying, about CPC and, kind of the environment that we work in now. If you think about it, the average conversion rate on panels, guys, let's be really transparent and honest here, is like 15% on like the best day, okay? So that means 85% of the time our respondents are having a negative experience. Would you do anything if 85% of the time you weren't successful? You'd move on. And so I think we really, as an industry, need to rethink how we treat respondents, how we engage them. And I love, Nancy, how you're talking with your organization. I think you've been an absolute thought leader in the space about changing the whole paradigm and instituting these rules of engagement at such a large company like Ipsos. I just think you're amazing at doing that, and that's great. But you're also an anomaly, and we need to change that.
All right, we got a comment over here. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Ben Tolchinsky. I'm with Cox Communications in Atlanta, and I don't know how many here represent the corporate community. It may be few, and so I will do my best to represent the corporate community as I can. I have a lot of comments, a lot of thoughts as it relates to these topics. As it both as a panelist myself, who's on a number of your panels and who gets frustrated, who monitors the situation, and I do get frustrated by disqualifying from 9 out of 10, and that's a frustrating experience. What we do, at Cox, and I was invited to speak tomorrow as well, and to give a perspective from the corporate side, but incidence calculations, and not surprisingly, are very important, and DQing 9 out of 10 in some cases is very important from an incidence to our business. And what we will do today is apply, do rep screening up to a certain point to identify the incidence calculations, and then wait to those proportions on the back end, as a mechanism to not have to screen through however many folks. And I don't know the extent to which that's being done more broadly, but maybe that, I don't know if that's something that is leveraged to help that issue with tons of DQs.
Thank you. All right, let's get another topic in here. Nancy, what do we got?
This one is a fun one. So, Meatloaf said you can't have all three, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So my 3 are quality, speed and field, and low cost. Which 2 are you taking? What's the trade-off?
All right. We got some comments.
Hey, Mindy, it's Mark from Focus Vision. When you guys talk about the three things there, the fact of the matter is, because the suppliers have had kind of a race to the bottom, price is never going to be an issue for this industry. If there's 5 suppliers here that can't provide those 3 things, I can go to 5 other suppliers and they will. We buy close to $20 million a year in a sample. I probably shouldn't have said that in this room. A year.
All right, we're done,
But-
everybody.
Yeah.
Mark's over there.
Nobody heard that.
Yeah.
Move on. Nothing to see here.
Let's ignore that. But my point of the matter is I don't, as a buyer of having that sort of buying power, I don't have to choose between 2 out of 3. I can get all 3, especially price, and if somebody, if Protégé won't do it, somebody else will down the road.
Let me challenge that, though.
Sure.
How do you know you're getting higher quality? And what level of quality is okay? So I can't give you a $2 CPI and give you really high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do it. Or I could if I could be in field for a month.
Right.
So there's trade-offs. So Mike, and this is where I struggle, is like, what is that trade-off? Like, where do we put quality in this? If you want a fast field, you want really low cost, do I start thinking about quality as a tiered thing? Like, oh, you can have these people on my panel because they're not that good, and then I'm going to save my really good people and charge more. Like, so there's like, it has implications for how we think about it. So my question is, what level of quality is okay?
Well, I don't think there's levels of quality in this business. I mean, you're going to have, it's pretty much binary. You're going to have good respondents or bad respondents. And, that's one thing that we do on a daily basis is, keep track of the providers that do provide the good quality stuff. And we measure these things with metrics internally. How many times are we throwing people out? How many times do we have gibberish open ends? How many times are we having to, refield for issues? So we do track stuff, I promise. It's not just all $20 million. But so we look at all 3 of these things, and obviously they're constant moving numbers, right? So it's not something that we are doing passively. It's something we do actively to maintain this. And I would, obviously encourage anybody that's doing any kind of buying of scale to do this as well.
So perfect segue, I think, from one quality to the next quality. So I think we see at times, like when the topic of quality comes up, everything gets lumped into quality, but there's different aspects to what we call quality. So
Yes.
is the data, right? So here it's a data quality. What does the data look like? Again, in the spirit of SampleCon, I think there's another topic we should bring to the forefront today, which has probably not been spoken before, but there's another quality issue plaguing, I think, the industry related to bots and fraud and manipulation of links and stuff like that that's happening. We're not here to freak anybody out. okay? You're already freaked out, and especially as the industry and the world continues to evolve into a programmatic automation. This is just the nature of it. By the way, it's not just market research.
No.
This is a problem everywhere, advertising too. So again, the point here is not to freak us out, but Courtney, Joe, maybe speak a little bit. I know you're very involved in the technologies and the automation, and you're seeing some of this going on in the platforms.
Yeah,
Maybe you can tee this up and share a little bit more, and again, get audience participation going here.
Sure. So I would say first, in ad tech, this is between a $16 and $17 billion problem a year. People cheating, stealing is really what we're coming down to here. And doing that in a way that's not face-to-face, it's not personal, makes it easier. And programmatic makes it even easier. So when I started in Sample back in the day when you had to walk uphill both ways to school in the snow, we just, we had these redirect links. We were just trying to figure out how to do a technical handshake, and just explaining how to pass two variables to a client that didn't even really know how to log on to the internet at that time was really hard to do. So we didn't really think about anybody stealing that information, because we also didn't see it as all that much of a commodity. I mean, what we're paying people to take surveys was nothing on an individual basis. And so scaling that, repeating that, and making that something that was profitable for someone to steal from just wasn't even in the books, am I right?
Yeah.
But today, you flash forward a lot of years, it is. So we have to find ways to mask that, to make or to guarantee that something hasn't been tampered with. So things like hashing.
How many people know what hashing is?
Yeah,
Do we know what hashing?
Who does not know what hashing is?
So maybe give an overview on hashing.
Hashing is very basically a way to ensure that what comes back to you hasn't been tampered with along the way. And that's really kind of taking it baseline. There are a lot of really very smart people at my company who can tell you all kinds of technical details about it, but ultimately it's just a way to understand this thing hasn't been messed with since it came back from a survey instrument. And then we have also secure client callback, which is really exciting, and I hope becomes the way of the future and a future standard in our industry, where essentially the programming platform makes a call over to who's receiving back the confirmation of complete or terminate, whatever the status is, and says, this is what happened. This is a valid complete, and it never is shown to the respondent. You can also do the redirect on the respondent like we traditionally have, but it's peer-to-peer, if you will. And what's fun about that is that you only have to do it on a few different platforms, because there are no more than 10 or 15 major survey programming platforms out there, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of us doing research. And we all do hashing just a little bit differently if we understand it. So that's why I would suggest that secure client callback is the way of the future. Joe, I'm sorry, I've kind of taken over the time.
No, I think, we're just trying to use different tools to kind of catch the same culprit, right? So we're all using digital fingerprinting, and we're analyzing data, and we're using the algorithms and trying to find the root of the evil that exists out there in fraud. And fraud is nothing new. I've seen it, in my career as well. But it just evolved. It evolves every year, and it becomes, more of a, catching malware than just finding a handful of people who, hacked the system, in the early 2000s. So I think it's important to kind of, be diligent. And one of the things about Equality is that, as a platform, you do as much as you can to prevent fraud and prevent, the automated bots and the VPN lines and everything that kind of starts at the beginning. But then that overarching quality needs to involve everybody in the room. So I think there's multiple combinations of, what does quality look like, for a client? What does quality look like for this project? What does quality look like to us as a platform? What does quality look like to the market researcher? So if you can have that communication and understanding, then I think there's lots of different ways we can all kind of chip at it in different pieces, but I think that's another topic as well.
So just an interesting perspective, like, Protégé, we weren't always in the research space. We operate other properties and businesses, but when we first kind of got into the market research and sample space, and our developers learned how we recognize a completion through this concept of a redirect, they said, there's no way we're doing this. They were floored the fact that the way you count the complete is through a client-side redirect, and they didn't want to touch it, right? So it was just very interesting, just a perspective. And I think, are you suggesting that, like, how do we secure these callbacks, these completions? Who do we need help from? Is it the survey platforms? Is it panel platforms? Who do we need to talk to make sure that we can get a server-side callback so it can be secure?
We're presently working with several program platforms to institute this. And I would suggest that, well, one of our goals is like 50+% of all of our traffic this year for secure client callback.
And are those difficult conversations, or everybody understands the need for it?
Well, I think everybody wants to reduce theft, so it makes it easy to have the conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, we're running out. Maybe one more.
Well, should we are there any questions on fraud and bots right now for these guys?
Oh, we got one here in the middle. Oh.
Hey, Garrick from TheoremReach. So coming from the audience provider side of things, I mean, there's two types of bad quality situations that I'm hearing here, right? There's the fraud and manipulation side, and that can be easily achieved with industry-wide adoption of something like server-to-server callbacks. But it can't, if there's one break in the chain, then it's very easy for a sophisticated hacker to figure that out. The other side of the fence, of course, is, you know, data quality. So a lot of the incentivized and river approach guys, of which, you know, we are one, we'll always ask ourselves, how do we fix people from straight lining or just going through a survey as fast as possible to reach the carrot at the end of the stick? So there's a lot of ways to achieve that. I'm not going to pretend to say we have all the solutions, because I don't think anybody does, but previous to this company, you know, I came from the advertising space, and I quickly saw the race to the bottom that took place there, and just the reason why there's 25 to 50% bot fraud that's very well documented and known is because companies just let it happen. Everybody, from the clients to the middlemen to the publishers, who were more than happy to look the other way because of pricing models like CPC or CPM, where it's way too easy to just allow for the eyeball to consider what the, you know, price point should be. So there's a few ways to potentially combat that. There's never going to be an actual solution that figures everything out, but a hybrid model like a CPI with a CPC, for example, where you reward on good quality data, but you also pay out for the panelists' time spent, is something that we've been seeing with great success. I'm very interested in this industry to help figure out and help understand how to fix and avoid things like bad data quality and manipulation, because I really don't want to see us turning into what the advertising space and ad tech and martech have unfortunately fallen into, where it's kind of like, how do you fix something so big? It's like a problem that has no easy solution without 50% bankruptcy or consolidation.
Thank you.
Sorry for the doom and gloom.
No, thank you. We got one over here.
It kind of goes along, best customer interpret. This kind of goes along with what he was saying, but I wonder, I don't know if this is kind of to all of you, but would you say that if we, you know, offered a higher CPI that we would have less fraud? Are people manipulating these links because they feel that their time is not being valued, that they're not being treated fairly? And if so, where's that sweet spot? Kind of like what Nancy was talking about, where we can leverage that and use that to our advantage.
I'm afraid it might kind of be the other way around. The higher the CPI, the more incentive there is to steal.
Yep.
A very good question.
There you go.
Well, okay.
I'm not going to argue with him. He's my boss, but
we're going to switch to one more topic, but I should mention that one of the things that has really struck me about fraud is there's two types that I've seen. One is the Chinese click farms and that kind of stuff. People just clicking through, you know, this is their job. They're making, let's say, 45 points, which is a lot of money when you live in another culture, you know, so it adds up. But one of the saddest things is we see like fraud from Venezuela. And these people are not doing it to, like, they're doing it because there's no jobs, and this is a way for them to get money. And we have actually seen people get upset because we throw them out, and they're like, but I answered all your questions. They went online and they looked up the brands and they're like, oh, but now I'm aware of them all. And that makes me sad because that's not who we're trying to go after. They're trying to be good. They just not in our target audience. So one more.
Let's get one more in.
One more. So when my dad went out and got a job, he said, I'm going to get a job and it's going to be for life. I'm going to have my 30-year career and it's all going to be one company. When I got out of university, I'm not going to tell you when that was, it was three jobs. 2 years at your first job, 5 years at your second, your third job was for the rest of your career. Now I see these kids come out and they say things like, I'm going to take this job until I get bored, and then I'm going to take that job until I get bored, and then I'm going to do something else entirely. It's a gig economy. This is related to our first question. Are we, as an industry, retaining and recruiting correctly, and how do we think about that?
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. Just a quick, I guess, 2 thoughts. And I think they're interconnected. Think about, so we're in California. Obviously, California doesn't have the concept of a non-compete, okay? Which, I don't know if I should mention those words here, but maybe it is a topic because I've heard it a number of times yesterday at the reception, people talking about non-competes and how it impacts them, their business, whatever it is, so maybe their thoughts about that. But I look at California and the model there. Obviously, there's no non-compete. And look at Silicon Valley, right? Is that a correlation, cause effect? So is it a bad thing? Is this allowing people to become more entrepreneurial, right? And open businesses? Is that bad? Maybe it shouldn't be. I know that we all have businesses to protect, but I don't know. Is that a bad thing? And I know maybe that's why we do have non-competes, because we don't want that to happen, but maybe, I don't know the answer, but these are just thoughts that go through my head when I think about this concept. I don't think it's just in jobs, though. I mean, you think about a house. Back in the day, you bought one house, you lived there for how many years? Today, it's you start a starter home, then an upgrade home, and then there's another home. So I don't know if it's just our generation or the fact that there's non-compete things. I don't know. Thoughts over here before we open it up?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts about this topic, and I think most of us do. I would challenge anybody to consider how this has touched your career or the careers of people who report to you or the careers of your kids. I mean, this is the future that we're talking about. And it's an emotional topic for me because I've personally experienced it. But more importantly, we need to foster competition in our industry so that we remain healthy. And we have to do that in every way possible. We also need to respect that we need to have talent in this industry. We need to retain it. It takes a long time to learn how to do this work from a research perspective. How many thousands of surveys have I authored? Well, it took me a long time to get to a place where I know how to ask a question. And if I get forced out of the industry, we lose that mind share. And that's not just me, I mean, it's everybody, right? So it's a big topic right now because we have a lot of mergers in our space happening as well. And we have a lot of people who are losing jobs. And that's business, that's reality. But how do we keep those folks active in our industry? And even more importantly, attract and retain new talent. And money's coming into this industry. We just had this wonderful presentation here earlier today. How do we make them confident that we're going to continue to be smart about this work? Joe?
Yeah, I think that's an important factor. I think, and we're, the market research is a smaller community, and keeping that knowledge share within it and not forcing people to go out of the industry, I think is the key topic. Trying to make sure that we, the people who have been on in this industry for so long, understanding, the detailed knowledge that they present, pushing them out is not going to help anybody. That, that internal discussions to keep them in the industry is going to be paramount.
You make a very good point. Organizations need to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They work very hard to get that edge.
So what's the right balance?
Yeah.
How do we How do we deal with it?
Yeah. I think we have.
We have 5.
Okay.
We got 5 minutes.
All right.
Okay, good.
I'll be quick. Adam from EMI. I think this can relate to 2 other topics that we talked about earlier, and that really comes down to really bad business decisions that we as like an industry have made. So if you think about mobile, we talked about where are we so far in mobile. You could say that we wasted a year or 2 by making a bad business decision that we all had to set up these mobile-first app-based panels. We weren't worried about where people took it, just that they took it with us. Then you could talk about API and programmatic. The problems that we have there, you hear like some commoditization. Well, we kind of flooded the market with tools to be first to market, to have the first program, the first DIY tool, the first automation. We created that ourselves. And now we talk about this non-compete type thing. It's that same stubborn old business decision, like what is the most capitalistic thing that we can do right now? Not that that's a bad thing, please. But, you know, like it's the same type of mentality that we had. It's a very narcissistic way of doing business that has led us, so far we've messed up twice. And this is like very easily number 3. If we become in an industry where like our number 1 tool is knowledge and that's our number 1 trade, to start limiting on who gets that knowledge, when they can use that knowledge, and where they can, those type of things.
All right. Let's get another one.
Lisa.
Lisa up front. JD, you're next.
Amen to that. Whew, I wanted to give you a big applause there. I totally agree with you. The other thing that's kind of crazy for me is what I've noticed the last few years is that non-competes aren't just isolated to salespeople, like big book guys and gals that are carrying like large books of business. They're having these young kids out of college who are entry-level project managers and account executives signing on the dotted line, and there's non-compete language in there, and they don't even know any better. And I think the other piece is that it's one thing when you leave on your own volition, but through these mergers and acquisitions, you lose your job, and then you can't go get a new job in the industry that you know. It's just pushing it way too far, in my opinion.
Amen to that.
Uh-oh. What do we got coming up here? JD. Oh, yeah.
There are a couple of places where I just sort of listened to the conversation, and having been both on the very large company buyer side with my former colleague wearing a lovely hat there on the stage, to sort of the newer tech side. I mean, I might see it in a slightly different way. I mean, and I've actually suffered from non-compete issues and things like that. I think fundamentally our business is changing in ways that we're not even fully appreciating at this point in time. I mean, Adam's point, which I completely agree with, is a scenario where an existing business is being forced to go through very rapid change and try to do so in a way that helps it preserve its revenue. That's fundamentally the issue that many of these businesses have faced, right? I mean, it's that this change has happened. In order to compete with it, they have to develop all these new technologies, leverage knowledge in entirely different ways, while they're still trying to preserve revenue and keep people employed. That, to me, suggests a lot of different things about how knowledge workers especially become used in a company. There's plenty of very smart people in this room who have a lot of research experience. We're not necessarily going to be writing questionnaires in the future. What we're going to be doing is helping programmers create tools that embed that knowledge so that you don't need one person to write 5 questionnaires. That one person will be able to help program a system that can do 5,000 questionnaires, right? So, I mean, I think we all need to be extremely skeptical, aware, a lot of different adjectives you can use about managing our own careers in this phase where we're very conscious of the way that the demand for our knowledge is going to change, and we're going to have to make ourselves more skilled to be able to participate in this and to make sure that we're preserving our jobs. Because if we just continue to look at the research industry and be nostalgic about the way it used to be, then it's a losing strategy, right? And we all have decisions to make. I mean, I'm not a big fan of non-competes and things like that, but we all have decisions to make about who we think we want to work for. I mean, it is, there's an aspect of the gig economy that's very empowering in certain ways, which is that people who have a lot of these types of skills can make choices that, you know, that where it's sort of like it's a buyer's market in some respects, or seller's market, I think.
Thank you. So we got one more, and then we'll close out. More back here. JD, that was calm. I was expecting more.
Hi there. Carl
Saving
from...
it for the Shark Tank.
Okay, it's coming later.
It's Carl from Zappy Store. The gig economy comment is interesting to me because I think I've probably come up through 5 or 6 years, admittedly not many of them in MR, where I've moved around quite a bit, and that's been important for me, developing different skills, getting exposed to different technologies and so on. I think as a business, and I can speak from our perspective, if you become too restrictive with non-competes and so on, that kind of environment is not going to appeal to the kinds of people you need to employ. We heard earlier about how it really inspired me, the comment about how we're in an extremely competitive marketplace now, where we're not just competing with traditional market research firms, we're competing with all types of data collection. If you want to innovate with that, you need, I'm thinking specifically about programmers and developers here, because that's what I do, but you need people who are free thinkers, you need people who have probably moved around a fair bit. They might not stay in our industry for very long, but they're very talented at problem solving. You need to create an environment within which they feel comfortable to come and work for you, but then again, have a recruitment pipeline that's good enough to fill the places that you lose when people move on, because it's inevitable, I think.
All right, so we're just about done. You know, just a closing thought on this, not on this, but on SampleCon, really. You know, like we mentioned before, a lot of time, effort, preparing, and stress goes into an event. I personally, in addition to this, just got back from, I guess, traveling the world, and just a lot of stress. Just got back 2 days ago. Just didn't know what to expect. But as soon as I got here to Austin, to SampleCon, I had this feeling of like, welcome home, like welcome back to the family. Like I'm here, this is really a family. For those that have been here for a few years, I think know that. People keep coming back. And for those that are here for their first year or their second year and didn't feel it, welcome to the family. Keep coming, you know, all questions are welcome. Share your opinion, get to know every single person in the room. And I think this extended panel and session is just a testament to SampleCon and sharing your voice. It's one panel. I know a few of us are up here kickstarting it, but it's all of you in the audience, so thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.